BookTubers writing books wasn't the problem. It's what happened when people said they weren't very good. So let's talk about BookTuber books. And yeah, I already know how this goes. Someone's going to hear one name and get defensive type of paragraph, so let's just say it up front. We're talking about a very specific window of time, the 2010s, early mid, a weird little era which kind of came and went where every YouTuber on the planet pretty much had a book deal. And honestly, people have learnt a lot since then. And if you like these books, genuinely, I mean that good. I'm not here to ruin that for you. I just want to talk about what it felt like at the time. Because it was a bit of a weird one. That's a good way to put it. I'm Darv James and welcome to this episode. If you want the podcast early access and get involved in the conversation, a deeper conversation, you're welcome to check out memberships, Patreon, Substack, or just buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. And if you're interested in just leaving a comment and having fun and hyping this video and liking, all of that goes a really long way, and small channels like mine need as much help as they can get. Let's be honest. There was a moment where it felt like if you had a camera and a bookshelf and decent following, you would get about 6 emails and you were one away from like a publishing deal. And look, I'm not judging that. If someone had emailed me back then and said, hey, do you want to write a book? I would have said yes before finishing the sentence. No dignity, no hesitation, no outline, just yes. Absolutely. Where do I sign? So I get it. But from the outside looking in, it started to feel less like this person has a story to tell and more like we have an audience we can sell to. I.e., look at the Brick Crew books and that previous video that I made. Somewhere, just go on the channel. And yeah, we have talked about a couple of them. And not to tear people apart, by the way. I'm not going to tear people apart, just context. There was Zenith, which if you were around at the time, you remember the hype. And I remember reading it and thinking, there are some ideas here, but there are concepts, but it didn't hit. It was messy. And its sequel, Nexus, came out, and weirdly, that was a lot better. Not amazing, but definitely the better book, and I regret not reviewing that book, if you want the honest truth. Which it kind of made the first one feel more frustrating, because it was like, okay, so this could have been there from the start, if that makes sense. And then there was Again But Better. And I remember the conversation around that book. And it was more than around the book, because this was where things started to shift from this is a booked release to here is a community event, and if you didn't like it, you were going to hear of it. Oh, you were going to hear about it. I made that mistake of being honest. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't personal, I was just honest. And yeah, the hornet's nest got kicked. And I think that's the part people forget when they look back on this era with all the nostalgia. It wasn't just books coming out, it was a weird environment where criticism felt almost not allowed. Like if you said this didn't work for me, the response was like, well, it wasn't fair enough, it was, you're just jealous. They're following their dreams, this book isn't for you. Which, by the way, you're kind of right, it wasn't for me, but once you put something out into the ether, once you publish a book, it's not just for anyone, it's for everyone. And that includes people who are going to have opinions about it, regardless of who wrote it. And by the way, my mother received messages from a very outraged Sasha Alsberg fan. Yikes. My mother was not someone to be played with. She found her parents. Long story short, that Facebook account got deleted rather quick. And here's the part that people genuinely don't see, especially from the outside when you're looking in. Even when these books sold well, a lot of them were critically panned. That sucks. And I don't mean like the world is ending, this isn't very good. Just that weird, quiet, behind the scenes little buzz kind of way. Publishers notice, teams notice, morale gets low. Because yeah, the book might sell off your name, but the second one, that's where things get kind of real. And if readers didn't love the first, they're not going to come back for the second. Which is kind of what happened with a lot of these, and a lot of these YouTuber books in general. The bubble didn't just pop because people stopped caring, it popped because the books didn't always meet expectations, and that's a very clean distinction to have. And I think a big part of it was the relationship between creators and their audience. At the time, it was very intense. People just didn't like these creators. They felt they knew them. So when you criticized the book, it didn't feel like you were criticizing a product. It felt like you were criticizing a person they cared about, which explains the hornets. So many hornets. Now, to be fair, I want to say this. Things are a lot different now. A lot of creators are independently publishing, some are taking years to write their books, some are genuinely, a lot of people are actually putting in really solid work. Like, there's no doubt about that. I know several who are. And I think the audiences now have changed. They're a lot more aware of how things work behind the scenes. People understand there is a man behind a curtain. There are deals, there's sponsorships, there's reach outs, there's all of this stuff behind the scenes that now people understand. There is still a bit of an illusion, but it's thinner. That's a good way to put it. It's a thinner illusion. The veil isn't so thick. And whether people like it or not, BookTubers, especially big ones, are influencers. That's not an insult. That's just what it is. And back then, publishers saw that and thought, guaranteed sales. We did it with Zoella. We did it with The Pointless Book. And to be fair, they weren't wrong. Or at least not at first. But let's not pretend we're above it all. Because I'll say it again. If someone had offered me a book deal back then, I would have taken it. No questions, no moral high ground. I would have sat here right now going, so this is my debut novel. Like, come on, we all would have. I think that's just the nature of the machine. And especially then, I think a lot of people would have said yes. Now I'd be a lot more wary. I don't think this era was a mistake. I think it was inevitable. You had a new kind of celebrity, a very old industry, and a lot of money on the table. And of course it happened. And honestly, some good came from it. People learned, improved, kept going. And I won't name names, but there are some writers from that time that kept going, that massively improved. And other people quietly disappeared from that side of things. And the rest of us, let's be real, we got stories, we got drama, we were stung by a few internet hornets, and now we kind of sit here years later, and there is a bit of separation between that. Yeah, that was a weird time. Like I said, I think it was just a symptom of the publishing industry tapping into this new market. You had people talking about books online, you had internet celebrities. And it started with people like Zoella and so on, with Girl Online, and then it spread into other corners of YouTube. And there are still YouTubers doing this in a good way. There are some great books coming out of YouTube. But back then, I think a lot of it was rushed as well. It was like, this person has a book out. Zenith is prime example of that. You can tell it was meant to be episodic. And that's not an insult. It's just the nature of it. So, what I'm going to say right now is, if you enjoyed this, remember to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if you want to really get involved in the conversation, we have a podcast, Early Access, and a weird and wonderful side that only members and Patreon people and stuff like that can see. And if you want my written work, my essays, you're welcome to check out Substack. It's not always about books. So I'll see you guys in the next one.